a sweet and pure college student.
She was literally the most innocent and genuine person I've ever known.
Viciously attacked in her own home.
What I saw was just absolutely horrific. I mean, this child went through hell.
Who would have a reason to want to kill this girl?
Police are desperate to find the killer before he strikes again.
It's panic.
There is somebody capable of doing what they did to Missy out there, and we don't have it.
But a dark trail of evidence.
He actually wound up weeping out of a fetal position.
This is bizarre. This is strange.
Leads them to a suspect
This was someone hiding in plain sight.
they could have never imagined.
No one would have known that, not anybody.
The city of Arlington is the home of 2 professional sports teams and a major amusement park.
There's something for everybody. And if you can't find something to do, then you've got a problem.
But in early April 1994, this idyllic community was rocked to its core.
911.
And it started when police received a 911 call from the Holly Park apartment complex.
911 S25.
Woke up 3:30 in the morning, smelling smoke. I walk into my living room. There's so much smoke that I can't see. It's panic. There's a fire. We need to get out.
Residents quickly evacuate the building as firefighters arrive to battle the blaze.
You're totally helpless. You just sit there and watch everything go up in flames.
I still think about it. Just how close I came to dying.
Firefighters track the fire to its source, an apartment on the 2nd floor. Once inside, they make a horrific discovery.
Firefighters discovered a body in the bedroom. This was not just someone falling asleep in bed smoking. This was something more.
Homicide investigators are quickly summoned and try to make sense of the devastating scene.
I was informed of what the fire department had found and what they reported. We had a body inside of a burning home. Detective Stanton and I make entry into the apartment. The fire is out, but there's still a lot of damage.
Virtually everything has got like a coating of this black, nasty soot.
Fire marshals could actually smell the gasoline and were able to see pour patterns. This was an intentionally set fire.
The trail of destruction leads all the way to the bed.
What I saw was just absolutely horrific. I've seen bad crime scenes, and I've seen crime scenes involving people that were burnt in fires. This was elevated. A young lady who you could see, even with the smoke damage and the burn damage, you could still see that this was a victim of a very brutal sexual assault. The body was laying on her back on the bed. The positioning is consistent with sexual assault. She had trauma to her face, as though she had been physically assaulted. Clearly there was a puncture mark in the middle of her chest. This child went through hell.
It was like nothing I've ever seen. You know, who would do something as horrible as this?
A lot of evidence was destroyed simply because of the fire damage. But we found what we believe might have been the murder weapon. There was a knife in the sink.
But fire damage to the knife has robbed investigators of the forensic evidence needed to link it to the killer.
Had that fire not been set, We probably would have had latent prints. No telling what we would have had.
Investigators collect the knife for testing and manage to salvage some papers that survived the inferno. For detectives, the most important goal is to identify their victim.
We found out that that apartment was in fact leased and occupied by one occupant, identified as Missy Gruball, 19-year-old college student from Burleson.
I can remember standing on the lawn, and I said, "There's Missy's car, but she's not out here with us. She was not accounted for."
So we had a general idea who our victim was, but that was not confirmed.
This body was so distorted that they had to use a forensic odontologist to confirm Missy as the victim.
Once we've identified the victim as Missy Gruball, we talked to her family in Burleson, and it's gut-wrenching. Missy's mother was devastated.
I had a daughter myself. That sort of hits home.
As investigators meet with Missy's family, word of her death spreads through the small community.
When I heard the news, my heart just dropped. Missy was so innocent and so pure and such an honest soul. She was so much fun, very friendly, nurturing. She would have given anything to help anybody. She was literally the most genuine person I've ever known. We were very active in church, she and I both were. Missy was very strong in her faith, very moral. She was always the person to do the right thing, always.
In high school, her strength went beyond her faith.
Missy was very focused. She was a very hard worker. That's how she was so successful in school. She was in the high school band. She played the French horn, and she was amazing at it.
Even as a teenager, Missy had a clear vision of what she wanted and the drive to get it.
She wanted to go to the University of Texas at Arlington, and she wanted to get her own apartment. But she didn't want to burden her mother financially. So Missy was working to support herself to afford to be able to go to school.
But even though she wanted to stand on her own, Missy's heart stayed close to home.
She probably spoke with her mom every day on the phone. Missy and her mother were very close. They were a team in life and treasured each other.
You cannot describe the pain that Missy's mother went through. But I let her know, I really need you. You're going to help me find who did this to Missy, because she knew her daughter better than probably anybody.
Missy's mother tells detectives what she knows of Missy's activities on the last night of her life.
Well, Missy worked these late hours as a food server. She would always let her mother know that I'm home, I'm safe. On the night of Missy's murder, she'd call her mother late at night when she got home.
She finished her phone call with her mom and then dispatch getting a phone call that the apartment's on fire, establishing kind of a window as to when the actual murder would have occurred.
Police determined that Missy had been killed sometime between midnight and 3:30 a.m. It's not much for detectives to go on, but when they arrive back in Arlington, they have an unexpected lead waiting.
Once the victim's name had been released, one of our officers came forward and said, I took a report listing your victim.
A week prior to the death, Missy Gruball filed a police report on a guy that's staying with Missy who stole from her, and I'm thinking that very well could be our killer. We need to find this person. We need to talk to him. We need to get him in here as soon as possible.
Coming up, detectives track a dangerous suspect
This individual made threats against her.
And soon uncover a lead they never expected.
It caught my attention immediately. Something is very suspicious here.
That puts them face to face with Missy's attacker.
I said, "You killed Missy Grubaugh. Let's start talking about this."
Arlington police detectives are searching for the killer of Texas college student Missy Grubaugh. They've learned that the 19-year-old co-ed filed a police report a week before her death.
Missy had reported a coworker took her tip jars, over $1,000 worth of tips.
Missy took the semester off in order to save more money, so all of her tip money was being hoarded so she could go back next semester to college.
The police report describes how Missy named a Charles Johnson as the potential thief, and that he had been staying with her before her money disappeared. Detectives speak to Missy's friends to find out more about Charles and his relationship to Missy.
Charles was a coworker and apparently was someone that she thought was a friend of hers.
She socialized with coworkers, typically after work.
Young people she worked with, that's her crowd. Charles Johnson at that time, we are told, was homeless. And so Missy, being the very generous individual that she is, allows him to come stay with her. In fact, she even gave him a key to her apartment.
Missy was very kind-hearted, and I think that it was very easy for some people to take advantage of kind-hearted people.
Talking with her friends, there was a common theme about Missy. She was not only incredibly sweet, but incredibly naive, too pure to see the bad in people. As an investigator, and that scares me because I see someone who is easily victimized.
Only days after Charles moved in, Missy discovers she has been played.
Missy finds out one day that about $1,000 is gone from her tip jar. Well, the only person that could have done that was Charles Johnson.
Enraged, Missy confronts Charles about the theft and kicks him out of her home.
Something else that was very important from everything that I learned about Missy was she will also stand up for what's right. So Missy immediately calls the police.
Missy filed a police report and a theft charge warrant was issued for Charles's arrest.
Here's some motive right here. This is retaliation for getting me in trouble. And so he's immediately on our radar. We want to see this guy. We want to talk to him. Problem is we didn't know where he was at. It's hard to find somebody who was basically homeless, and we had detectives that were assigned to find him.
While police search for Johnson, Missy's autopsy report comes in. It confirms investigators' belief that the fire is not what killed her.
The autopsy findings demonstrated she was dead before the fire started. She should have inhaled some smoke. We should have seen some soot. We should have seen some carbon monoxide in her blood. That's not the case here at all. She had a bruise of her left eye and an injury on the brow ridge that would be consistent with being struck by a fist or another object. Injuries directed that show that the assailant wanted to feel in control and dominant. A fatal stab wound to the chest was the actual cause of death. But it went completely through her heart and damaged her left lung, and there was a massive internal bleeding.
The autopsy also confirms detectives' worst suspicions. The attack was sexual in nature.
She had been forcibly penetrated. This was a rape homicide by a very aggressive perpetrator.
Though the fire destroyed physical evidence at the scene, the medical examiner immediately notifies detectives of a major discovery.
We did a search of the body for any remnant evidence that wasn't destroyed by the fire. Semen was recovered that could be analyzed for DNA.
Forensic evidence and physical evidence is great. You've got to have it. It leads you to your killer. So that semen was a forensic link to the suspect.
The semen is sent for DNA analysis, hoping it will point to the killer. But detectives make a calculated decision not to make the information public.
The fact that she was sexually assaulted was not public, it was not released. And the reason for that is because it's what we call guilt knowledge evidence. And it's knowledge that is only known by the person who did the crime. You never reveal that because that can lead you to that suspect and to identify them. That's very powerful evidence.
Other evidence is piling up too. Among the documents collected from Missy's apartment, detectives discover a treasure trove of personal letters.
These were letters from someone named Ivan Villa. The nature of the letters indicated some type of relationship between this individual and Missy Grubaugh. We don't know if it was romantic or not, but some type of close personal relationship. So that's important. We needed to find out who this individual was.
Detectives do a background check on Ivan, and they're alarmed by what they uncover.
Ivan was a registered sex offender. And that just set the hairs on the back of my neck up.
Yeah, this is the sort of individual that we're looking for. Let's go find Ivan right away.
Detectives investigating the rape and murder of Missy Grubaugh have found letters in the victim's apartment that reveal she was having a relationship with Ivan Villa, a young man with a dark past.
He was, in fact, flagged as a sex offender. And so he's immediately on our radar because we know that Missy was sexually assaulted.
Detectives examine the letters between Missy and Ivan and discover that they had a tumultuous relationship.
The context of those letters looked like a conflict of two young adults trying to make something work in a relationship that is filled with confusion.
The conflict centered around how far Missy would allow the relationship to go physically.
Missy was very moral. It was an admirable thing in our faith to remain pure until we were married. It's something that Missy took very seriously.
The letters suggest that Ivan and Missy may have come too close to crossing the line.
Apparently, there might have been times where they went a little further than Missy was comfortable with. You could tell that she was upset about that.
Missy's friends knew that she was not one to back down under pressure.
If she felt like she was being taken advantage of, then she would stand up for herself, and I admired that about her so much.
Bottom line is, we need to bring Ivan in. We need to talk to him because he was, in fact, in some level of a relationship with Missy at the time of her death.
2 days after Missy's murder, detectives bring Ivan in for an interview. He claims that he and Missy were working through their issues in a kind and loving way.
Ivan told me that he cared for Missy, and he wanted a relationship with her. He certainly did want to have that relationship go a step further, but Missy was convicted to her beliefs and to her faith. They were also battling with the fact that he had this crime over his head.
Ivan tells detectives he was home alone asleep the night Missy was murdered.
That's not an acceptable alibi for myself or Detective Stanton.
But was it really possible this young man could have committed such a horrible crime?
When you start talking about the personality of who you're looking for, you got to be careful. If you start picturing this person as this evil predator, you may miss the actual killer. That's why you have to follow the evidence. The fact that we had semen from the crime scene means we have forensic evidence that would either connect him or exclude him.
Detectives ask Ivan to provide DNA samples. But until those test results are revealed, detectives do not have grounds to hold Ivan in custody.
In 1994, those tests usually took anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
While waiting for results on DNA tests for Ivan and searching for Missy's former coworker Charles Johnson, detectives continue their investigation by canvassing Missy's friends at the restaurant and learn something that adds another suspect to the list. Although this time, this suspect could be at the very top.
The name Jeffrey Smith came up. Her work associates told us that Jeffrey Smith was an employee there who Missy reported and got him in trouble at work. What we were being told is that really upset him and angered him.
Restaurant staff tell the detectives that Jeffrey had threatened to kill Missy during an outburst, and he was fired a few weeks later after getting into a fight with a manager.
What we are being told is this individual was hot-tempered, and he had made threats against her. So we're putting all of this together and thinking, yeah, we really need to talk to this guy.
But who could imagine a coworker committing such a horrendous crime? Detectives speak with another employee at the restaurant who knows Jeffrey well.
His girlfriend, Kristen, agreed to come in to speak with Detective Stan and I.
Visibly nervous, Kristen paints a troubling picture of her boyfriend.
Kristen told us that they were living together, but she also shared that she was concerned with his personality. He was very volatile. She was afraid of him, and she did not feel safe being there with him. She was going to move out and move back with her parents in Denton.
But it wasn't just fear for what Jeffrey might do that was causing Kristen to leave him. It was a fear of what he'd already done.
What Kristen wanted us to know, and she was very open about it, was she actually suspected that Jeff was involved in the murder of Missy.
Detectives investigating the murder of 19-year-old Missy Grubaugh are interviewing Kristen Waller, a young woman who believes her boyfriend, Jeffrey Smith, could be the killer.
She just basically said, this is what my belief is. So I asked why, how did she formulate that? Kristen told us the night of Missy's murder, Jeff did not come to the apartment, and he didn't come back all night. So she didn't know where he was at. She also knew the conflict between her and him. So she's putting all this together, and she actually believed that Jeff was with Missy on that night and that he committed this crime.
Kristen gives detectives the phone number for where Jeff is staying. A background check shows the 22-year-old has no criminal history, but detectives are still suspicious.
We know that he had made some threats against Missy, and his whereabouts are unknown on the night of her death, so we needed to talk to him. I called Jeff Smith after speaking with Kristen, and he actually was cooperative and agreed to come to the police department.
In the interview room, detectives are struck by Jeff's demeanor.
Jeff Smith was smiling and nonchalant, just really not taking the entire situation that serious. I asked him, what was your relationship like with Missy Grubaugh? His story was she was infatuated with him. And as a matter of fact, her infatuation is what created the problems and the conflict between him and Kristen. Kristen's telling us, no, I'm moving out because the guy scares me to death.
Jeff also has a conflicting account of his alibi.
He gave us this excuse that he was with Kristen. We already had information that he was not.
When detectives suggest Jeff is lying to them about his alibi, he laughs them off.
I've seen this type of personality before. He's narcissistic, he's cocky, he's arrogant. And I certainly wasn't going to take anything that he said at face value.
Despite their concerns about Jeff, detectives have no evidence to connect him to Missy's murder, and are forced to let him go. But before he leaves, they ask him for a DNA sample. And to their surprise, he agrees.
He did give us the samples that we needed for forensic analysis that would certainly connect or exclude him from the murder.
Then, 4 days after Missy's murder, Detective Lenore gets a frantic call from Kristen about Jeffrey Smith.
He had abducted Kristen earlier in the morning, physically abducted her and drove off with her from her parents' home in Denton.
Kristen tells Detective Lenore that Jeff was distraught and held her in an apartment for 8 hours, threatening to kill her if she tried to leave.
Kristen's telling us the motive was that Jeff just didn't want her to leave him. He released her safely a little later that day, but now she didn't know where he was at. She was definitely afraid of him. She contacted the Denton Police Department and ended up getting a warrant for his arrest for kidnapping. He became a fugitive. You've got this guy who is a loose cannon, and there was a level of urgency to find him. We put out a national broadcast along with that warrant that he is also a suspect in a murder investigation.
With Kristen safely at her parents' house and police in several states searching for Jeff, detectives in Arlington find their murder investigation in a holding pattern.
As far as Jeff Smith, we do have his hair, his blood, and his saliva for DNA that would certainly connect or exclude him from the murder.
DNA testing is still underway, but days later, investigators do get an important update from the lab.
They were able to type the blood from the semen, and they knew they were looking for someone with a certain type of blood.
Jeff did not match the blood type from the semen.
In addition to Jeffrey Smith, Ivan Villa is also ruled out because of his blood type, leaving Charles Johnson as the only active suspect for Missy's murder. And Charles is still at large.
That is incredibly frustrating because there is somebody capable of doing what they did to Missy out there, and we don't have them.
As the weeks pass with the case unsolved, Missy's family and friends grow more and more concerned.
It was very disheartening for a lot of us. We just watched the news and would hang on to anything that they would mention about it. It made all of us wonder why it happened to Missy. It was just devastating.
Then, a month into the investigation, detectives get a tip from an unexpected source.
I got a call out of the blue from Miss Grubau. She wanted to let me know that she recalled the conversation that she had with Missy. It was so incredibly bizarre. And I just thought something is very suspicious here.
Detectives hunting the killer of college student Missy Grubau have just received a lead that has turned up the heat on a case going cold. The victim's mother recalls a detail from the days just before Missy's death.
Missy's mom is providing information about how Missy had talked about this guy, Luis.
He was a 32-year-old man who had come over to the apartment, and the main thing that Mrs. Grubau remembers is that he talked to her all night long till in the early morning hours, but then they got involved in a pillow fight.
At the time, Mrs. Grubau thought little of the playful incident, but she suggests maybe Luis could help the investigation with information about Missy. Detectives have a different view.
This is bizarre. This is strange. The 32-year-old man had a pillow fight with her. It caught my attention immediately.
Investigators ask how Missy knew Luis.
Luis worked with Missy, and he lived at the Holly Park Apartments. She had done some babysitting for Louise's baby at the apartment complex.
Detectives' first stop? The restaurant where Missy and Luis both worked. Luis isn't there, but the manager tells them Luis is a model employee.
He was an Army veteran. I learned that about him. No criminal history. Matter of fact, management gave him an award for a heroic act. He actually stopped a robbery.
The detectives ask workers what they knew about Luis's relationship with Missy.
Co-workers described Lewis as a friend. Sometimes after work, they might enjoy a beer together.
Detectives also hear something that catches them off guard.
A work associate relayed to us that Lewis made the comment, and these were his words, is, "I hope they catch that son of a bitch that killed and raped Missy." The fact that she was sexually assaulted, no one should have known that. That was never released. He might have just been speculating, but the fact that it was said really, really alarmed me.
Investigators have uncovered yet another suspicious coworker in Missy's life, one that she saw every day. Detectives asked the manager for Luis's phone number.
Told him I was investigating the death of Missy Grubal and that his name had surfaced from her babysitting his son, and Luis agreed to come see me. He was relaxed, he was polite, pleasant, regular, clean-cut guy. He told us that Missy used to babysit his son and that they worked together. So I told Luis what I want to do is exclude all of the known males to Missy so that I could find the guilty party. And the process in which I do that is I take samples, blood, hair, and saliva, compare it to the DNA, and exclude them.
The request instantly changes Luis's mood.
His response immediately was, what are you talking about? Wasn't the evidence all burnt up? And I said, no, it wasn't. I've got significant incriminating evidence that was specifically left there by the suspect. Now his demeanor is changing, and you can see the concern in his face. I kind of even broke my own rule a little bit here, because a lot of times I don't like to give guilt knowledge information, but the fact that I knew that he had already said something about Missy being sexually assaulted, I went ahead and revealed to him whoever killed Missy sexually assaulted her, and I've got their semen. And Luis immediately says, I've got to go. I have to leave. And I have no legal right to keep him, regardless of what I believe. I just simply asked Luis, are you going to give me your sample? He says, I got to get out of here. I got to leave. We'll do it Monday.
Monday comes and goes with no sign of Luis, but detectives don't let up.
I call him. He calls me back Tuesday. We make arrangements for Wednesday. Come Wednesday, he doesn't show up again.
Detective Lenore calls Luis at work, but gets some alarming news.
Management had informed us that the woman that he was living with at the time, his common-law wife, had called and said that he had to leave town. I called her. I said, I hear Luis is gone. You and I need to talk.
Jeanette has been living with Luis for 2 years. The couple moved into the Holly Park apartments 6 months earlier.
They had been together long enough for them to have a child together. She was also pregnant with another child. But what's interesting is on the Monday that Luis was going to meet with me, which was about 3 days earlier, they got married. They got legally married. Well, in Texas, a wife cannot testify against her husband. I mean, those are my thoughts that are going on. I kind of kept that to myself and said, okay, that's interesting.
Jeanette knew Missy as a sweet girl who used to babysit her son and had been shocked to hear about her murder.
And so I asked if she recalls what occurred on the night of Missy's murder. She said Luis had gotten off work about 10:30 or 11 and informed her that he was going to have some drinks with some friends. Then he came in close to midnight, and then she heard him leave.
2 hours later, Jeanette hears Luis return.
She hears him come into the apartment and takes a shower and then leaves again. And then she hears him come back again. She notices that he's coughing and he smells of smoke. His story to her is that he was out jogging and he noticed that there was an apartment on fire. And so he went in there and that he saw this individual on a bed, and he said it was Missy, and he tried to do mouth to mouth. He said, but he couldn't do it, and he was overcome by smoke, and that he had to leave, and he came back. That's it, end of story. They just go to bed. Nobody calls 911. Nobody does anything. They go to sleep. I mean, the story is so bizarre, but she didn't question him. And I don't think she ever really saw it for what it was until she actually sits down and starts telling me. And as she's telling me, reality is setting in as far as what Luis might have done. She's pretty much stunned. I said, I need to go into your apartment. I need to get a search warrant.
Investigators descend on Luis and Jeanette's apartment, just a few buildings over from where Missy was killed.
One of the things that I wanted was his dog tags. Because he was in the Army, I wanted to know what his blood type was. And I wanted to know if the blood type from his dog tags matched the blood type from the semen.
The blood type matches that of Missy's attacker. It's the link detectives have been looking for, and enough to bring Luis in. But first, they'll need to find him.
So I got an arrest warrant for Luis. The next day, I get a teletype that the vehicle that Luis was in was found abandoned and burned in San Antonio.
Detectives believe they have finally uncovered the man who murdered Missy Grubaugh and set fire to her apartment. But Luis Arroyo has fled Arlington. His car found abandoned and set ablaze in San Antonio.
We don't know, but suspected there was evidence there, but the car was pretty much gone. I mean, it was burned up.
There's an urgency. We need to find this person as soon as possible.
Detective Lenore suspects Luis's wife Jeanette knows where he's hiding.
I told her that we realize you had nothing to do with this crime, but you can be a party by covering and by lying. So I said, you realize that when she was murdered, she was sexually assaulted. And when she heard that, you could see it upset her. It angered her.
Confronted with the full horror of what was done to Missy, Jeanette gives up Luis.
Jeanette gave me the address where he was staying in San Antonio. San Antonio Police Department went into the home and arrested Luis without incident.
Detectives Lenore and Stanton traveled to San Antonio to confront Luis Arroyo in person.
It is the most unique interrogation I've ever seen. I mean, Luis really had like a mental regression, and he actually wound up in a ball on the floor, weeping and kind of in a fetal position.
I don't know what he was doing. I just thought he wanted us to have some type of empathy for him.
When Luis finally tells his side of the story, it doesn't add up for detectives.
He did not admit to sexually assaulting Missy Grubaugh. He did admit, yes, I did have sexual intercourse with her. He said, we had consensual sex. I knew it was her first time, and I wanted it to be a very gentle and pleasant experience for her. That just sickened me. What happened to that young lady was anything but gentle and loving. It was brutal.
Faced with Luis's denial, Detective Lenore changes tactics.
I said, you killed Missy Grubaugh. All right, let's start talking about this. And he said, you know, I don't remember. I I remember getting a knife. I think I did stab her.
Detectives are stunned. Is this the confession they've been waiting for?
I'm not going to call it a confession because my definition of a confession is someone who says, this is what I did and I did everything, that you have evidence that they committed. Luis gave a statement with several admissions that included guilt knowledge information. Luis did not admit to setting the fire, but he recalls that there was a fire set. He gave us all of this incriminating information that clearly said it was him.
They have enough to charge Luis. But detectives want to make the case against him airtight.
Detective Santa and I got an evidential search warrant and collected his blood and his hair and saliva sample. He was, in fact, matched to the DNA from the sexual assault kit.
With Luis's statements, detectives can put together exactly what happened on the night Missy was murdered.
I believe he went there thinking he could convince her to have intercourse with him. His primary focus was to have sex with that young lady. Maybe initially he thought would be consensual, which it would never happen. So now he's mad at her, and then he took it to another level, physically abused her, sexually assaulted her, and then he killed her. After he killed Missy, he needed to destroy evidence, and that's when he made his decision to set fire to the apartment.
Lewis was charged with capital murder. Once we had the written statement, we had the statements from the wife. Pretty straightforward case.
As Luis awaits trial, detectives zero in on two former suspects in the case.
Charles Johnson was finally tracked down, and he was not even in the area at the time of the murder.
Jeffrey Smith was arrested and convicted of kidnapping his girlfriend, Kristen. He received a 4-year sentence. Luis Arroyo's trial lasts only 5 days.
We got a conviction rather quickly. And in Texas, once a person is convicted of capital murder with the death penalty waived, it's an automatic life sentence.
Although detectives have found their killer, the win is bittersweet.
He being in prison will never take away the pain, the horrific torture that child was put through. And him being in prison will never heal the wounds the family has. They never recover. You can't bring Missy back. You just do what you got to do and make sure people pay for the crimes they commit.
Missy's mother is in a state of permanent grief. Missy's death did leave a very large void. Missy's life was taken way too soon, but it was a beautiful life. She was a beautiful soul, and she still is.
For more information on an unexpected killer, go to oxygen.com.
Emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. Please, can you send someone quickly?
Yeah, I am.
Police have launched a murder investigation after a woman was found dead at her home in Middlesbrough.
I was absolutely terrified, thinking, what if somebody got in my house?
It felt like there was a serial killer at large and you wondered if they were going to do it again.
When a successful pharmacist is found murdered, her devastated husband goes into shock.
No, Jess, come on, baby, wake up. Baby, wake up.
And a community is torn apart.
You won't believe, obviously, what we went through and the level of betrayal there. It was a shock.
In the northeast of England lies one of Middlesbrough's most attractive areas, Linthorpe.
It's quite an affluent area. Big houses, quite leafy, long driveways, nice cars on the drive, professional people live there.
You know, it's a family area, it's very friendly, Best part about it is the neighbours, you know, we all get on and good community. It's very safe, yeah. Very safe.
In the heart of the community were a couple named Jessica and Mitesh, who owned a pharmacy in the village.
We've got a chemist here actually on our doorstep. It's a husband and wife team, so they work together. The couple are really friendly people, helpful. Whatever you need, they're always there for you to help you out. You know, any advice that you need, they're always there.
Both Jessica and Mitesh were from large Hindu families in West Yorkshire.
We grew up in a joint family, so there was 12 of us in my household.
Jessica was the first child, a happy, calm child to what I remember. She was a good child, never any bother.
Very fond memories of growing up with Jess, because we were only probably about 18 months apart in age, so quite close together. She was always fun to be around, because she was always happy no matter what, always had a smile on her face.
Jessica had big plans for her future and went to study at Manchester University.
Jessica always said that she wanted to be a pharmacist. She always wanted to help people. That was her thing.
It was at university that Jessica met Mitesh, and the pair quickly struck up a relationship together.
I think Jessica's mum was ill around the time that they got together, and Mitesh was support for Jessica and would, you know, say all the right things, buy her presents, teddy bears, things like that.
He was constantly showering her with gifts. I think she must have had like 50+ Me To You teddy bears in her collection, because we shared a room. They were like dotted all over the room. And she was just really happy. I got privy to a lot of their evening conversations at bedtime. Mitesh and Jessica would often be on the phone, and because we were sharing a room, it would be a case of her saying to him, "You put the phone down," and he'd be like, "No, you put the phone down."
They seemed just like a happy couple, or a happy young uni couple.
Jessica's mother sadly passed away, but Mitesh helped her through this difficult time, and the couple soon mapped out their future together, despite some initial resistance.
Initially, when Jessica approached Dad about getting married, he wasn't so ecstatic about it. He didn't think they were a suitable match for Jessica, but Jessica persisted. She insisted that she loved him, and vice versa.
She wouldn't take a no. So, of course, obviously, in this day and age, we know that we can't force our child. And when she says that, "No, Dad, if I marry, it's him that I'm going to marry." But if that's the man she wants to marry, then that be it then.
In July 2009, the couple threw a big Indian wedding.
The marriage took place here in my garden. It was the first wedding within the Patel or the Hindu community that had 500 or 600 people.
Newly married, the couple set their sights on a fresh start and set up home among the village community of Linthorpe.
They got a lease on Roman Road Pharmacy and then bought a house on the avenue. A lovely big house which needed work doing, so they spent time renovating it and building up their pharmacy, you know, becoming well-known people in the community.
Having both a successful business and a new home in place, there was just one thing missing from their perfect life.
Jessica wanted to be a mother. She's always had a very motherly and a maternal instinct. Being the oldest sibling out of all 6 of us as well, she was always that much more maternal. And she wanted children of her own. I think it's something they'd thought about for years.
Apparently the couple struggled to fall pregnant, so started undergoing a course of IVF treatment, which I can only assume is a really grueling process, and that shows how much they must really wanted a child.
She expressed to me that it wasn't working naturally and that they were going to be starting IVF. All in all, Jessica went through 3 rounds of IVF that were unsuccessful. Each time she would ring me and she would say it didn't work, and she would be heartbroken that it hadn't worked, and I think the emotional distress of it all was just too much. She'd just come back off holiday and we were talking in the evening, and she was just telling me about the IVF and this 4th round. She was so happy because this round was a positive round. She said that it looks like it's going really well. They managed to freeze 3 embryos, and in June, so within a matter of weeks, she was due to have them implanted, and she was so positive they were going to work this time. The happiness was in her. I can't even describe how happy she was, because that dream of becoming a mother was just about to materialize for her.
But just weeks before Jessica's dream of motherhood could be realised, everything changed.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. I've just come home and the house is ransacked and she's just on the floor. She's got duct tape all over her and she's like unconscious.
Right, you said is your wife breathing? Can you feel a pulse?
No, I can't feel anything. Her hands are really cold. She's got like blood on her nose and stuff dripping out onto the floor. Please, can you send someone quickly?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. The police are outside. Can you let the police officers in?
It's Jessica.
I'll leave her with you, okay?
Police and paramedics rush into the house and find Jessica in the living room. They try resuscitating her, but she is pronounced dead at the scene.
All we knew was that there'd been a murder, her husband had came home from work and found her.
Has somebody broken into their home? And is it a burglary gone wrong? It was just utter shock that, you know, anything like this could have happened.
In the picturesque village of Linthorpe, the community is waking up, reeling at news of a murder. But the previous morning, May 14th, started out like any other day in the Patel household.
Jessica and Mitesh had been in the pharmacy working. Jessica's dad popped into the pharmacy to speak to them both.
I can see that smile on the day I walked in, which would have been just after 10 o'clock. And I can still see her far back because it was a sort of a deep pharmacy. So I said, I'll be down next week. And she goes, okay, Dad, I'll see you next week. Of course, I did hug her. And I couldn't believe that I would never see her again.
Mitesh worked the early shift, leaving the pharmacy to spend the afternoon at the gym.
Jessica went home, Mitesh pops back to the pharmacy, goes to the local pizza shop to pick up a pizza for the pair of them, texts his wife to say he was getting the pizza, he'd be home shortly.
He came from the chemist roughly around about 7:30. He ordered his pizza and then he left. We were quite busy at the time, so it must have been about 20 minutes, half an hour. He'd come back. I gave him his pizza. I shook his hand like normal, and he left with the pizza.
Mitesh then goes home and makes the awful discovery.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. I've just come home and the house is ransacked and she's just on the floor. She's got duct tape all over her and she's like unconscious. Her hands are really cold. Please, can you send someone quickly?
Yeah, I am.
No, Jess, come on, baby, wake up. Baby, wake up.
Cleveland police respond immediately and preserve the crime scene.
We have in the investigation what we call the golden hour. The first hour is critical because the evidence is contained in the scene and it's nearby. You seal the scene totally and nobody, absolutely nobody, including the husband, goes back indoors. Once that's happened, we'll talk to the witness and get the story of events.
News of the attack soon spreads.
I just came back from a friend's house. I couldn't get into the road. Loads of van police, 2 ambulances. It was like a movie, like something you'd see out of a movie. To be honest, it was absolutely horrendous.
Police have launched a murder investigation after a woman was found dead at her home in Middlesbrough. Officers were called to a house on the avenue in Linthorpe at 8:20 on Monday evening. 34-year-old Jessica Patel, originally from the Leeds area, was found with serious injuries at an address in Linthorpe and was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives are appealing to anyone who may have seen...
I got a call from my younger sister, and she just said to me that something's happened in Middlesbrough. So I asked her, I was like, you know, is everything okay? She says, I don't know, Dad's gone, we're just going to wait and see when Dad gets there what he says. So I said, okay, keep me updated. But when I woke up, I saw my husband sat at the end of our bed. I sort of sat up and I looked at him, and when I looked at him, I thought, something's not right. And he turned around to me and he just said to me, I've got no easy way to say this to you, but Jess passed away last night. I think those words in that instant hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart started racing a lot like it's racing now. Just thinking of that moment, I didn't want to believe him. That can't be true. You know, how could this just suddenly have happened? I remember calling Dad, and Dad's confirming that it was true. Something had happened, a burglar had got in, and Jessica had been harmed in the process, and that she'd been killed.
After receiving the devastating news, Jessica's family immediately rally round and make their way to the family home to support her husband, Mitesh.
I walked into their main living room where Mitesh was sat on the sofa, and I went straight over to him, sat down next to him, and he buried his head into my shoulder and was crying. I consoled him, and just hugged him and told him that no matter what, we were there to support him. I myself was crying. The whole room, to be honest, was crying. Everyone was upset.
News of Jessica's murder sends shockwaves through the village.
I can't really know that. How can a murder happen in this beautiful place? It's a Linthorpe village area, everyone's friendly, and, you know, all of a sudden you actually hear like that she's been killed. And you think, you know, how can somebody do that, especially to a chemist, a pharmacist person who's actually, you know, there to help you.
How it happened to beautiful Jessica, you know, and she was so lovely, and you can't even imagine how someone can kill her. It's a fear. It's a lot. I have no words, really.
It felt like there was a serial killer at large, and you wondered if they were going to do it again.
With such a big story breaking in the close-knit village community, local journalist Felicity Collinson is hot on the case from the off.
I went out to the scene and the street was just like really quiet, you know. It was quite like an eerie quietness that morning. Cordon had now been moved to just around the house. It was just covering the driveway. There was forensics in white suits walking in and out of the house, carrying cases in and brown envelopes, evidence bags. There was CSI vans, uniformed police officers on guard. I started to knock on neighbours' doors to try and find out what had happened.
With Mitesh too distraught to speak, it was left to neighbours to speculate what had happened. Had someone targeted this young, successful couple out of jealousy?
A lot of people have been saying that there's been a burglary in the house.
Obviously, they look like a wealthy couple because they have quite a wealthy house, you know, and obviously having the pharmacy and everything. Someone who knew them, possibly, had, you know, took a chance to burgle them, maybe thought she had money, maybe jewellery, and that's where it was, and she was just in the wrong place, the wrong time.
We check our doors, even windows, and make sure, put alarm on, put everything on to go out, and we don't let our kids go.
I was absolutely terrified, thinking, what if somebody got in my house? What if that happened to me? You know, I've got children. I was absolutely terrified.
Was it somebody who thought that the couple had money with them having the pharmacy? You know, did they have a safe in there where they kept the take-ins? You know, could somebody have broken in for that? Or was it somebody who needed or wanted drugs and believed that they may have kept drugs in the house? Or was it a big mistake that they'd got the wrong house?
While a grieving Mitesh stays with the family, police take a closer look at the crime scene. And one thing jumps out immediately. There's no sign of a forced entry. Meaning one thing, Jessica knew her attacker.
If there's no sign of forced entry, it looks like they've got in through an open door, which suggests that the victim would know them and allow them in. Everybody is a suspect are eliminated, without exception. So what we've now got to try and do is eliminate those who couldn't have been there at the time.
With no sign of a break-in, everyone known to Jessica is under suspicion. Could husband Mitesh offer clues as to who his wife may have let in the house?
The neighbour said she opens the door far too easily, far too quickly.
Neighbours saying about her being very nice, very trusting, too trusting, would allow anybody in the house without checking their identity. And therefore we'd have to look at that, because if there's no forced entry, we will be worried about somebody who's just been let in the house. Does she have a relationship with another man or another person?
Police need to identify a timeline of events in order to pinpoint when the killer gained access to the house. So they turn to Mitesh for help.
You'll want to know where he was, what time he went, because the timeline, when he left and when he came home, is significant. Because you need to be looking at perhaps other houses and CCTVs.
Mitesh explains to police that after going to the gym, he had gone out to get pizza at his usual takeaway, before returning home to discover his wife's body.
The husband of the victim seemed like he was a pleasant, kind of like quiet type of guy, wasn't he? He'd just do his work. He'd come, he'd order his food, you know, go home like everybody else.
The pizza parlour's CCTV helps police create an exact timeline of the evening and when Jessica was left alone.
The police came in to the shop and kind of like asked for the camera footage of the husband of the victim, and basically kind of explained what was going on in a small way. They didn't really tell us exactly what was going on, but they just kind of gave us a clue to why they need, you know, and what's happened.
He took my camera, CCTV camera, he took it from here. He said, I want to see what's going to happen in here, like when he came, when he go out, that's it.
With Mitesh's movements that evening clear, police are still no closer to establishing who had gained access to their home. But post-mortem results help police identify the cause of death. Could this lead to clues as to her attacker?
It's found that she died from pressure to her neck. There was also a suggestion that from marks to Jessica's neck that a ligature of some sort had been used.
And in asphyxiation, of course, you've got to look at was something placed over a mouth, over a nose. Was there some other way of stopping the oxygen getting to her? All those sort of things you expect the examiner to tell you about.
Despite this crucial information, no murder weapon is found at the scene. 3 days into the investigation, and police are no closer to a motive or a suspect.
Police hadn't arrested anybody. I know personally I felt a bit of worry for the people living in that street. You know, I would have felt worried.
But on the 17th of May 2018, things take a dramatic turn.
A man has been arrested in connection with the murder of a woman in Middlesbrough.
Everyone was talking about it, that they've caught somebody.
When we find out who the police have arrested, it's just tragic, just a tragedy.
In the pretty village of Linthorpe, the close-knit community has been coming to terms with the murder of local pharmacist Jessica Patel. In the days since, Jessica's family rally around a grieving Mitesh.
On Thursday morning, we proceeded to Mitesh's house again, just to lend support. spent the morning there, but then Dad received a call from the liaison officers asking us if we could return home because they needed to speak with us.
They didn't really tell me what it was for, but something related, which I thought they may want some more statements. We come home, we sat in that room, and there's the police, the family liaison officers, and they said, Mr. Patel, we have to tell you this. It's Mitesh. And we're arresting him. And I says, hang on, what did you say? And they repeated it, where I says, look, have you got it right? And they said yes. They assured me that it's him, and as we speak, we're arresting him.
Having just spent the morning comforting Mitesh, his arrest comes as a shock to Jessica's family.
You can't help but think that why would he do it? You know, what reason could he possibly have for having to murder Jessica? At the same time, you're like, have you got the right person? Because if you haven't, that person's getting away.
Yesterday afternoon, police arrested a 37-year-old man in the West Yorkshire police area on suspicion of murder following the death of 34-year-old Jessica Patel in Middlesbrough on Monday. The man remains in police custody.
News of Mitesh's arrest becomes public and locals react in horror. How could this loving husband and pillar of the community have anything to do with such a brutal killing?
It was a bit of a shock, to be honest with you, because we thought of them as, you know, good people, normal people. We didn't think anything was going on in their home.
We were all just so shocked, gobsmacked, really. We're still thinking, is this really a husband who's been, you know, arrested for her murder? You know, he's a pharmacist, she's a pharmacist. You just don't expect this at all.
So what had led to the arrest of Jessica's seemingly besotted husband? The man she'd been looking forward to starting a family with.
The police are still searching the house, you know, for evidence and clues. And then there's a breakthrough.
So senior security officers find a hard drive wrapped in clothing underneath the mattress. It has a serial number on it which relates to the CCTV in the house.
When police had previously spoken to Mitesh, there had been no mention of this CCTV. Surely the first thing that you would do, or one of the first things you would do if your wife had been murdered, is think, oh, we've got CCTV. The footage of the killer will be on our CCTV. But there was no mention of this at all from Mitesh.
Police examined the CCTV footage from the hard drive.
It shows that it was switched off or taken or removed 6 minutes before he called the police for the 909 call.
Police rewind the footage to look for any clues earlier in the day. But what they find shocks them. The CCTV shows that at 3:30 p.m, Mitesh returned home from the gym, but never left to get pizza before Jessica came home from work at 7 p.m. Instead, Mitesh doesn't leave the house till 7:42 p.m. and then returns home with the pizza at 8:15 p.m. 4 minutes later, the camera is switched off.
This is a crucial piece of evidence because it doesn't show any other person entering or leaving the house other than Jessica and Mitesh. You know, there's no other, you know, intruder or person sneaking around.
Mitesh calls police at 8:24 p.m. to report finding his wife dead. With no sign of anyone else coming to the house, police hone in on their now #1 suspect.
So now he becomes the prime suspect. We now need to look at what's the motive. So you'll extend the investigation, and you'll also start looking now at all his personal life and personal technology he has. Has he got an app on his phone? What does his computer say?
And the family computer drops a bombshell discovery.
There was searches on his computer, you know, how to kill my wife.
His searches included employing overdoses of insulin, employing perhaps strangulation.
We've also got searches on his laptop and on his phone about the fact that he will earn £2 million in insurance payouts from his wife's death.
Have police finally uncovered a motive for Jessica's murder?
These were various policies that were taken out at various times. It's interesting to note that the first policy was taken out shortly after Mitesh Patel had begun in 2013 to investigate ways to kill.
But the biggest breakthrough comes when police look at Mitesh's mobile phone, which recorded his heart rate and activity.
Mitesh Patel was not to know that he had this particular app activated on his phone. It tracks not only his steps, but also if he's done any staircases.
The app reveals to detectives that immediately after Mitesh had arrived back at the house, at a time when he said he discovered Jessica's body, he had also gone upstairs for 4 minutes before calling 999.
There was no reason, no innocent reason, for him to have done that if he was coming home to find his wife's body on the floor, just to the right of the front door.
So what had gone on that fateful day? And what was the truth behind their seemingly loving relationship?
The 14th of May seemed to have begun like most other days. It's right that Mitesh went to work early that morning. Jessica got into work herself an hour or two later. The day continued as other days. Because he'd worked the morning shift, Mitesh Patel left work. He was due to go to the gym at lunchtime, and then he went home. He spent the rest of the afternoon in the family home, and he was there when Jessica got home from work. Of course, he was to lie to the police about that, but he was there when she got home from work, shortly after 7.
Detectives established Jessica was killed soon after arriving home. And before Mitesh left the house to get pizza 42 minutes later.
After he'd murdered his wife, he left the house. He then went to the pizza parlor just down the road and ordered a takeaway.
He looked like he was on edge or there was something wrong with him, but we didn't take any notice.
He returned to the family home. He's got to have dismantled the CCTV footage, gone upstairs, hidden it, then come downstairs and then made the call.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked.
Confident they have their man, Cleveland police make the decision to charge Mitesh for the murder of Jessica.
To be honest with you, after all that and how I was feeling, and for this to happen, you won't believe, obviously, what we went through.
Having portrayed himself as the devoted husband, running a successful business with his wife and planning to start a family together, the truth behind this perfectly cultured facade was starting to unravel.
When Jessica got married to Mitesh, I think she thought that she was going to have this lovely life with this great guy who'd bought her presents and supported her through her mother's illness. But then the cracks started to show early on in the marriage.
One of the things that she found difficult was that there was not a great deal, if any, sexual activity between her and her husband.
Desperate to start a family, Jessica sought IVF treatment as an alternative way to have children. But this took a destructive toll on her well-being and the couple's relationship.
She was injecting herself in the stomach with steroids and all sorts, and at the time she ended up on antidepressants. She became such an anxious person. Mitesh would quite often blackmail her by telling her that he would leave her and their relationship would be over if she was unwilling to carry on with going through the rounds of IVF. And I think for her, that relationship falling apart would mean her dreams falling apart.
Soon enough, Mitesh's dark side was to reveal itself.
Not long after they were married, Jessica's grandfather gets ill. And in his final days, she wants to obviously spend time with her family and her grandfather. Mitesh wouldn't let her do this. And there's reports that in the car one day, she's sort of like trying to put her case for wanting to go and see her grandfather, and he doesn't want her to, and he apparently hits her. She told a family member that he put his hands around her neck and that it hurt. A pharmacy worker had seen Jessica limping, and apparently Mitesh had thrown a mobile phone at her.
And as time went on, she became not just less bubbly, but more withdrawn and even losing weight. And we all came to understand that which Jessica's family suspected, that she was being controlled and kept apart from her own blood family.
But what could have led this once happy marriage to end in tragedy? Why did Mitesh want to keep Jessica apart from her family? And why did he end her life in such a violent way? 37-year-old pharmacist Mitesh Patel has been charged with the murder of his wife Jessica in their home in the village of Linthorpe. Having pleaded not guilty, the case is sent for trial.
To be honest, we can't believe that he had the audacity to plead not guilty when there was all of this evidence against him. It was just bizarre that he would even try to, get off with this.
In December 2018, the trial begins at Teesside Crown Court.
Well, in my life, I had never gone to a court before, never ever been in a court. We knew it was coming. To be honest with you, I didn't want to be there.
For the first time since his arrest, Jessica's family comes face to face with her alleged killer.
There was a couple of times that he had the opportunity to make eye contact with the family. There was clearly no compassion in him for the fact that he had lost his wife so horrendously. He didn't at any point scream his innocence. I don't think I could ever recall him saying, "It wasn't me, it was somebody else."
The prosecution reveals how Mitesh first appeared to police.
When he was first seen by the police, it was noticed that he had scratch marks down his neck. He was in due course to explain those away as having been as a result of his session at the gym that lunchtime. Well, that was clearly not the case. Further work by the forensic scientists were to reveal that underneath the fingertips of Jessica Patel was his DNA, particularly on the right hand, and she was right-handed. So the picture began to be built up of a struggle in which Jess had fought with her attacker. And clearly, that attacker was her husband, whom she had scratched down the front of his neck.
Police have never revealed what they believe to have been the murder weapon until now.
It's found that she died from pressure to her neck. At the scene in the house was a Tesco carrier bag, and tests showed that the inside of the bag had traces of Jessica's saliva and blood in there. There was also suggestion that from marks to Jessica's neck that a ligature of some sort had been used. So it was surmised that the Tesco carrier bag had been used to suffocate Jessica.
After suffocating her, the court is told Mitesh bound her with duct tape. Crucially for the prosecution case, a reel of duct tape was discovered in the pharmacy, with police believing Mitesh hid it after going to order pizza on the night of the murder.
The jury were given both pieces to look at. They were photographed, and once the tape had been flattened, it was the clearest possible fit, just like a jigsaw puzzle. It was unique.
I was present at the court every single day. I think 95% of what came out in that courtroom we were unprepared for. There was only 5% of that we went in knowing, and that 95% was devastating. To learn what Jessica had gone through, how she had died, what he had subjected her to all those years, it was just devastating.
But the biggest shock was yet to reveal itself in the courtroom. Far from the perfect life they had portrayed to the world, it seems Jessica was harboring a secret about her husband.
Jessica found evidence on her husband's phone of the gay flings he was having and of pornography. He insisted it's banter. He insisted he loved her more than anyone. And if she wanted, he would give up seeing anyone else. He said all he wanted was her and to have their baby.
He had extramarital affairs with men. He was a regular user of the gay app Grindr. He was caught in clinches with another man in the pharmacy, which was recorded on the pharmacy tapes.
But it soon became clear to the courtroom that Mitesh had already found another love abroad.
Messages were found on his phone from a lover in Australia who he wanted to set up another life with.
In 2011 December, on the Grindr app, he met a guy called Amit Patel.
So was Mitesh's dreams for a new life the motive behind the callous murder?
Mitesh cunningly plotted to remove Jessica from the equation. He basically wanted Jessica out of the way so that he could move on and start this new life in Australia with his apparent soulmate.
But not only did Mitesh have a secret lover who he planned to move to Australia to be with, he had an even bigger plan. Mitesh wanted to bring up a child with his new lover. The child he should have been bringing up with Jessica from the frozen IVF embryo.
I still can't believe that somebody could go down to that sort of level. He wanted to take this embryo with him to Australia. That was his plans.
After a grueling 12-day trial at Teesside Crown Court, the jury returns its verdict. Mitesh is found guilty of Jessica Patel's murder. He is sentenced to 30 years in prison.
When the judge passed the sentence of 30 years, again, his expression, I watched him the whole time, his expression was blank. Nothing at all. And he was gone in an instant, taken away in an instant.
With Mitesh now behind bars, Jessica's family is slowly coming to terms with life without her.
She was a fantastic older sister to the rest of us. I'm always going to have so many fond memories of growing up with Jess. It's just so unfortunate now that I have another memory that's so tainted. I always can't help but picture her lying there on that floor in that living room, fighting for her life. And I always think of that moment because I can only think that she must have thought of us in that moment, knowing that her life was fleeing away from her, and how desperately she must have thought, someone save me, knowing it was her husband that was doing this to her. I can't shake that moment from my head at all. It's just there forever to stay. I wish it would go away, but it just doesn't.
I want to be strong, and I want to be living the way I used to, even though I know that it's not possible, but I want to be strong. This is the worst thing that could happen on this planet, and it's happened to me and to this family. I do not want this to happen to nobody.
Even to this day, every day, and every time I think of her, there's a part of me that feels so much guilt inside of me that I couldn't do anything to affect a change. I didn't notice what was going on, but obviously there's no going back. There's no changing or undoing what's happened. But you've still got to live every day with that guilt inside of you and somehow reason with it as well.
A hard-working New Mexico family.
My dad was up at 4 in the morning, wouldn't go down till 10 o'clock at night.
She was always the type of person to just help everybody.
Is murdered on Father's Day.
My parents are dead.
They were covered in so much blood.
That was the worst I've ever seen.
Police uncover a loving family.
He was a shaken baby. We were told he may never walk again.
With a startling criminal connection.
She has a history of burglaries.
And a jaw-dropping revelation.
I absolutely was shocked. I didn't think I have ever known anybody in my life who could do something that brutal.
To this day, I still can't understand how the person could do something this tragic, this gruesome.
They said, I know who did it, I know who did it.
El Rancho. A tiny New Mexico town home to just a few hundred families. A place filled with honest, hardworking people.
It's a very tight-knit community. It's kind of one of those places where everybody knows everybody.
On Father's Day 2011, police receive a 911 call that shatters the early evening calm.
Santa Fe 911, where's your emergency?
Imagine boy! Carl!
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. I just went there and put the answer to the phone. And I did. Did you come out and I walked over to check right over the people with the yard?
I can't hear you when you're yelling. Try not to yell into the phone. I can't understand you.
My parents are dead.
The caller is a 35-year-old woman named Cherie Ortiz Rios. Officers arrive at the property she shares with her parents, Lloyd and Dixie Ortiz. Police enter the home occupied by Cherie's parents and her brother to investigate, starting with the master bedroom.
Dad observed a female laying face down in her nightgown attire, deceased.
The brutality that was involved was unspeakable.
She had some trauma on the right side of her temple region.
Police believe this is Cherie's 53-year-old mother, Dixie Ortiz.
As you walk out through the main door to the bedroom, there's a couple of steps up into a kitchen That's where a deceased male was laying face down. That was probably the worst I've ever seen. There was several defects in his head and shoulder area.
Cherie tells police that this is the body of her 21-year-old brother, Stephen.
As you walk back out the room to the rear of the residence, there was another deceased male laying face down. And he had several injuries to his upper torso and his head region.
The dead man is Cherie's 58-year-old father, Lloyd. Detectives called in the medical examiner to take charge of the bodies. For now, they can only speculate about the cause and time of death.
There were limitations on how well we could examine the injuries because they were covered in so much blood.
It looked like something that had penetrated all of their bodies. So at that point, led us to believe that they were actually shot with some type of a firearm.
While the medical examiner carefully removes the bodies, a forensics team meticulously looks for evidence.
We did not find any shell casings. There wasn't a gun located. There was nothing that indicated that we had our murder weapon at the scene. We have no physical evidence as far as some type of a fingerprint. There weren't any footwear impressions in any of the blood. Maybe we can get some DNA, but we don't know that initially. That has to be sent to the lab for testing. With this type of crime scene, generally there's only a couple different types of motive. It's love, money, or anger. So we have to look into those. Lloyd's wallet was on the counter right next to where Stephen was lying in the kitchen. It had money in it. It didn't look like somebody was in there to steal from them.
There's no evidence to suggest this is a robbery, so police consider whether other motives could have been at play.
Who would stand to gain something from killing 3 people on Father's Day in their house?
Police need to learn more about the victims and their family. They turn to Cherie, who lives just steps away.
On the 2/3 of the property, Lloyd, Dixie, and their son, Stephen, lived, and the other third was occupied by Lloyd and Dixie's daughter, Cherie, her husband, Jesse, and their 2 children, Catalina and Robert.
When her sister arrives, a despondent Cherie can barely keep it together.
I remember my sister running up to me and telling me, that my mom and my dad and my brother were dead.
There were nothing I could do or say to make it better for her. Because I love my sister so much, so much.
Cherie and Angela choke back tears as they tell police all about the most important people in their lives.
My mom and dad were the best parents that I could ever ask for. They were always there, always accepted us for who we were, always stood by our side, no matter what.
Lloyd was a tile contractor who was popular in the town.
My dad was amazing. Up at 4 a.m, wouldn't go down till probably 10 o'clock at night every day.
Lloyd had been married to Dixie for 34 years. She worked in a nursing home.
She didn't even think of that as being a job. It was just who she was.
Dixie's selfless, caring manner didn't stop with her work. In 1989, when their daughters were just teens, she and Lloyd took in a baby in need.
Stephen was 7 months old when he came into our home as a foster child. He was a shaken baby. His left side of the body was paralyzed. He had cerebral palsy. We were told that he may never walk, talk.
I would grab him out of the crib and stick him right next to me in bed, and he would sleep right next to me. I just loved him so much.
As he grew, the family's love helped transform Stephen into a strong and happy little boy.
Walking, potty training, the developmental milestones, they took a lot longer for him to reach, but he reached every single one of them.
Stephen was part of our church, and he was such an absolute joy. He would greet everybody. Everybody in church loved him. He made it a point to talk to everybody. He was quite a young man.
Stephen, Lloyd, and Dixie's lives have been cut tragically short. But why would someone murder such a loving family? Police find one possible reason: growing outside.
There were several marijuana plants that were being grown. There was a fenced-off area where there was 17 plants growing.
These plants were not visible unless you were directly over them. It was a very tight oxygen area that was padlocked.
A marijuana crop under lock and key outside the family home piqued detectives' interest. Had they just uncovered an illegal drug operation?
My parents had a medical marijuana card for my brother and a grower's license. So they were legally growing medical marijuana for my brother.
My brother had 2 brain surgeries to relieve some of the pressure in his brain. And so they prescribed medical marijuana to him to help relieve the headaches he was having. They were pretty debilitating at times.
The family had known that Lloyd was growing the marijuana for Stephen, and the family would smoke some of the marijuana.
While the marijuana was being grown legally, detectives suspect that it could have attracted the attention of the wrong people.
Was this some type of a drug-related incident?
Police become even more concerned when Cherie and her husband Jesse relay a story about a few suspicious characters they heard outside their home on the night of the murder.
They indicated that they were watching a movie that ended between 1:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning. Their dog started barking, and Jesse got up and walked to the front window. He saw a car that was parked outside.
He heard a kid yelling out there. He heard somebody say, "Hurry up, come on." And he was like, "There's somebody out there." And so he went back in and even grabbed a gun. And he got in his truck and he drove his truck toward that car.
Coming up, the autopsy reveals an unexpected cause of death.
It's not generally your weapon of choice. It's extremely violent, it's brutal.
And the town is stunned when the killer is revealed.
People were in disbelief. As a pastor, it was hard for me to even fathom.
Hours after Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz are found dead, police are hunting for the driver of a car seen outside the home the night before the murders.
We interviewed Lloyd and Dixie's daughter, Cherie, and she said that her husband, Jesse, saw a car that was parked outside and to the left of the property. He had indicated that the vehicle was a gray car.
The dog started barking crazy. My husband, Jesse, he came out and even got in his truck.
Cherie tells police Jesse followed the vehicle in his truck. But when detectives interview Jesse, he tells them a completely different story.
In Jesse's interview, he had failed to mention that he actually left the house that evening.
You never left the house? No. Why would your wife say you left the house?
That I left the house.
Why would she say that?
Maybe because I was outside or something.
She said she heard you leave the house. Why would she say that?
I don't know.
It was pretty concerning that he would forget one of the biggest details of that evening with his involvement.
As detectives continue to press Jesse, he suddenly remembers details from the night before.
Jesse.
You know what? I might have left the house. When I seen the car parked. You know what? That is correct. That is correct.
You see the issue?
Yeah, I do. I forgot about that.
It's something you don't just forget about, Jesse.
Well, I'm serious, man.
Man to man. You know where I'm going. Right. It's time to start talking.
I did. I do remember, because I remember going back down there to get my keys. And I did get in my truck. And I drove towards the dead end that way.
What happened then?
I passed by.
Why would you not confront somebody right there?
Because I didn't expect anything.
Jesse, lying to me, dude.
I'm not lying to you, bro. I'm telling you the truth.
Jesse's changing story now has police eyeing him as a suspect. And when they ask him about his relationship with his in-laws, they think they may have hit upon a motive.
We found out something very alarming. There was some stuff in the close past that had caused some family tension between Lloyd and Jesse. And we knew at one point Lloyd was embarrassed of the way that Cherie and Jesse's property looked, so he actually built a fence in between the two properties so he didn't have to look at it anymore. So we knew there was some tension there.
Police can't rule out that tension in the family could have boiled over. Could Jesse have slipped out of the house and committed 3 heinous murders over a minor family squabble? To get to the truth, police grilled the couple about where they were the night of the murder.
They told us the timeline of where they were. They went to a casino. They were there for X amount of time, drove to their residence. They put in a movie right away. They were able to identify almost minute for minute of what they did that entire day, which is kind of unusual.
And when police ask Cherie about finding the bodies, she tearfully gives them a detailed account of the horror that unfolded.
And I walked in and I was like, Mom. And then I walked over to her to shake her, and her head was blown. And so I ran to the kitchen to check for my brother and my dad, and I thought it was my dad laying on the floor in his underwear because his face was so blown off. And so I ran home screaming for my husband. And my husband went back and he said, honey, that's Stephen in the kitchen. Your dad's dead in the backyard.
Cherie's story is plausible, but one thing she can't explain is something she told police when she called 911.
They're dead. They have gunshot wounds to the head. They're dead. They've been dead since the 40s.
Cherie said that she knew if she would have went over there, she could have saved him that morning, which told me that she had intimate knowledge of when the homicides actually occurred, which pretty concerning. How would she know that? We didn't know that timeline of when they were actually killed.
Detectives are no longer suspicious of just Jesse. Is it possible that the Ortiz's own daughter could be involved as well?
We did obtain DNA samples from Cherie and Jesse to try and analyze to see if there was anything that could be matched.
Police searched Cherie and Jesse's home, hoping to find a physical link to the murder. With so much activity in the tiny town of El Rancho, news of the crime spreads.
My wife and I raced down to the property. When we had got there, there was quite a few people there. Cherie was just outside herself. She was just hysterical.
Detectives can't help but wonder if Cherie's tears are genuine, yet they're unable to find any physical evidence to link Cherie or Jesse to the murders. When the autopsy report comes back the next day, they hope the results will help them shed some light on the mystery.
I actually did attend the autopsy, and during the course of the autopsy, the pathologist informed us that the wounds sustained were the result of impact trauma. They were killed with a pickaxe. Stephen Ortiz, the son of Lloyd and Dixie, received 17 blows to the head from the pickaxe. Evidently, the victims were beaten long after they were already deceased.
The amount of force that was used to cause this was extreme. My initial reaction was, who had this much anger to want to kill him in such a gruesome manner?
After receiving the autopsy report on a horrific triple homicide in El Rancho, New Mexico, detectives have just discovered that the Ortiz family was killed with a pickaxe. Now that police know what to look for, they quickly set out to find the murder weapon.
One of the agents remembers seeing a Maddox-style pickaxe lying in an adjacent field to the west of the residence. So we immediately went to the scene and found our pickaxe, covered in blood. Processed it to the crime scene lab in Santa Fe and waited for results.
There was a lot of hope that there was going to be potential evidence that would link the assailant to the pickaxe.
There was nothing. There was nothing there. We got DNA that was identified on the pickaxe from the 3 victims. Nobody else.
Still, the murder weapon does tell police something about the killer.
It would take a great deal of force to cause that type of injury.
Police had to consider whether either of their suspects were strong enough to commit the crime. Jesse was capable. Was Cherie? While police search for answers, the small town of El Rancho is gripped with fear.
The whole community was on high alert. This kind of crime is very unusual for that area.
All we knew was that there were 3 dead people that the community loved, and nobody knew why and how.
Police continue to look into the alibis of the main suspects, Cherie Ortiz and her husband Jesse Rios, who said they'd been to a casino that night. Investigators see if their story can be verified.
They were seen on surveillance video at a gas station, and then they went to a casino.
This supports the couple's claims. Investigators also track what they did the rest of the evening.
We were able to pinpoint the length of time that it would take to drive from the casino to their house.
The timeline puts them in their home, right next door to the murders, at the time of the crime. But it's not nearly enough evidence to pursue a case. Police hope to utilize the publicity surrounding the murders and make an appeal for tips.
Everybody wanted to say who they thought it was, but didn't have any merit behind any of the stuff they were coming forward with.
Detectives also combed through their witness interviews and hit on a name they hadn't considered before.
Initially, Angela had mentioned that Nicholas Ortiz was a 16-year-old, just a regular kid in the community. Cherie had a son that was Nicholas's age, and they went to school together.
Nick Ortiz had a positive relationship with the family. There's no relation, by the way, between Nick Ortiz and the 3 Ortizes who were victim. It's just same last name.
Nicholas's family lived right up the road from us, and that's how him and my son had become friends.
He was having some troubles at home. Eventually, my sister opened up her home to him, gave him his own room.
He would go over next door to Lloyd and Dixie's house. They would give him money. They took him to the flea market. They took him everywhere. So they basically just treated him like he was one of the family.
But the transition to family member wasn't all smooth.
My husband and I had caught Nicholas going through our drawers. We had just started noticing a little bit of money missing. Things moved. So we started giving him an allowance every week for the chores he was doing as well.
Nick's troubles extended to school, too.
Nick had come home from school, and you could tell he had been punched in the face and was kind of beat up. I freaked out. Oh my God, who did this to you? He said, I joined a gang with some friends of mine, and I had to let them beat me up. And I was like, okay, so now today we're going to have the anti-gang talk. And I mean, we did.
The family tells police that joining a gang was just one example of the problems Nick brought to their home.
One night, my father had asked my son to cut down a plum tree that was dead in his backyard. And when they went out there, Nick was hiding behind some raised flower beds they had in their backyard. And the backyard was a secured area for the 2 little dogs they had, so both gates were locked from the inside. So he had to have jumped the fence to get back there.
Nick basically jumped up and kind of went towards him, in a joking manner, like to scare him. And Lloyd wasn't impressed by it. He didn't think it was funny.
After stealing from the family and joining a gang, this was the final straw for Lloyd.
He basically told Nick that he was not welcome at that property ever again.
It made us feel on guard and very uncomfortable, and we think it's best that it's time for him to move back home. I then text Nicholas and told him that he could come and pick up all the clothing and furniture that we had purchased for him over that time period, and he could take it home with him. I never really saw him again after that.
Could the Ortiz's rejection of Nicholas lead him to kill? Had he murdered Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen in cold-blooded revenge? The police bring in Nick for questioning.
Do you know anything about this case that could help us?
Police in El Rancho, New Mexico have a new suspect in the murders of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz. An unrelated 16-year-old named Nicholas Ortiz.
Do you know anything about this case that could help us?
I don't. The only thing that I've heard was what people have told me from the news.
He came off as this calm kid that didn't do anything wrong. He was just kind of like your baseline kid.
Detectives confront Nicholas about his speedy exit from the Ortiz home.
Lloyd just told you. What exactly did he say? You remember? Yeah.
Telling me that I effed up my trust with them, not to go near them anymore or anything. I said, okay, fine. So what you guys want to do? And that was really the last time we spoke.
Okay. How did you feel then?
The detectives ask where he was the night of the murder.
He said he was at home with his dad and sisters leading up to Father's Day. Between 12 and 1 o'clock, he woke his father up and wished him a happy Father's Day and went back to bed. And he was there when his mom got off of work, which was around 7:30 in the morning. Everything was corroborated as far as his alibi.
Not only does Nicholas have a solid alibi, his demeanor in the interview doesn't suggest he is the killer.
Do you think if you found out who did that?
If I found out who did it, I would call the police right away.
Police find people in the community who vouch for Nick.
Nicholas was part of our congregation. He was very, very gentlemanlike. He was kind. He was willing to help. He would stay late sometimes and help us pick up after the church.
Police cross Nicholas Ortiz off the suspect list. Then, 2 days after the murder, they get an urgent call from Cherie Ortiz.
I called the police and I told them we found out about a safe that was well hidden, enough where my sister and I didn't even know it existed. At my parents' house, my Uncle Walter had called me and said, I built your dad a secret piece of furniture that would hide a safe in it.
The unit was so well concealed, the police had not found it when they searched the house days earlier.
I said, I do not want to know any more until we contact the police. So we had to have it opened up there at the police station.
Inside was $80,000 in cash, as well as some of the life insurance paperwork.
That's when we found that my dad had been saving money for years. He had his retirement saved in there.
Cherie says she didn't know about the money, but police make a discovery that puts her claim in doubt.
We had learned through district court that the power of attorney had been given to Cherie at this point, and she was basically going to be the heir of hundreds of thousands of dollars in life insurance policies that Lloyd and Dixie had. And that $80,000 that was in the safe was part of a cash out from those life insurance policies.
Cherie says she didn't know about the insurance policy. The inheritance was large enough to give Cherie and Jesse a powerful motive for murder. But motive alone wasn't enough to arrest either one of them.
We have no physical evidence that could tie Cherie and Jesse to the crime.
The discovery of the safe also causes police to speculate on how the Ortizes had amassed so much money. Could it have anything to do with the marijuana growing on the property?
Kind of raised some concern to us as to why he was growing it. Are they possibly selling this stuff?
Detectives investigate whether Lloyd was secretly involved in trafficking. The answer comes back clear.
Nothing was taken from this house. It didn't even appear that whoever was there at the time knew that there was pot plants being grown behind this fence. And knowing anything about the industry of marijuana, there were smaller plants, they weren't mature. We were able to pretty much rule out that the gangs were tied in to this.
It's another blow for the investigation. And as days turn to weeks, detectives are no closer to catching those responsible.
Essentially, you do run out of leads or you run into dead ends. As frustrating as it was for us as investigators, it had to have been exponentially worse for the family.
I was on the phone with the police every single day asking, what have they heard? Anything new? What can I do to help? And we were always told, nothing. There's nothing you can do.
I truly felt like they were not ever going to solve this case.
Then, 16 months after the murders, detectives get the break they've been praying for when they receive a call from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department.
In October of 2012, I had just gotten home from work and I got a call that there's somebody there that wants to give some information to me in reference to the homicide. And she was in jail. She said she just wants to get something off her chest.
Detectives are hopeful a new tip will finally help solve the murders of Lloyd, Dixie, and Stephen Ortiz. The information comes from a young woman in the custody of Santa Fe police.
Ashley Ball was 24, and she has a history of burglaries and of drug use.
Ashley told officers that she knew something about the El Rancho murders. At that point, ears started to perk within law enforcement.
Before questioning Ashley, police look into her background.
Ashley grew up in El Rancho.
Ashley wasn't necessarily a troubled teen per se, but she got in trouble a lot.
From a young age was in and out of the detention center.
Lead detective Craig Bobnock questions Ashley about what she knows.
As I started explaining that it was a voluntary interview, she kept interrupting me saying, I know who did it, I know who did it.
Ashley claims that on the night of the murder, she was smoking weed with her cousin, Jose Roybal, and a mutual friend.
They needed money, so they were gonna go hit the Ortiz's house. And I took them, I dropped them off, and I went back home.
She told me that she owned a gray 1997 Saturn car, two-door car, during the time of the homicide. So I immediately thought of Jesse's statement.
Cherie Ortiz's husband, Jesse Rios, had told police he saw a gray car driving slowly past their house late on the night of the murder. But it's what Ashley says next that grabs detectives' attention.
I got a call about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes later.
The call was from Jose's friend, and he needed a ride.
He got in my car, he had blood on his pants, he had a trash bag tied around his right foot. That's when he told me that he killed Stephen, Dixie, and Lloyd. He said he threw the pickaxe by the fence. He kept saying he killed him, he messed up, he killed him.
Ashley told me that the single person that killed the Ortiz family was Nick Ortiz.
Ashley's revelation is explosive. This family took in Nick when he was having trouble at home.
He stayed there for upwards of a couple of months, in which he got very close with the family. He would eat there, he would get off the school bus there. It was basically his home, and they took him in.
But police need to be sure Ashley's telling the truth. After all, she has a rap sheet, and their suspect has an alibi.
The information that Ashley Roybal provided had to have come from somebody who was actually there during the incident.
Ashley explains another detail that puts her at the scene.
Do they wear gloves? Do they care about fingerprints usually?
He had a sock on his hand.
He did have a sock on his hand?
Mm-hmm.
Police are hopeful they can find evidence in Ashley's car, but it's nowhere to be found.
It's 18 months later. She had said she had sold it to a tow company. The vehicle ultimately ended up at the shredder. Couldn't find it.
Investigators had to find another way to verify her story.
I received a lot of the phone logs, and that was my big piece of evidence at this point.
Cell phone records show the communication between Nicholas, Ashley, and her cousin Jose peaked around the time of the murders, so investigators immediately bring Nick back in to confront him with the evidence.
So I brought Nick in. He's in 100% denial of everything until I bring up the phone records.
I'm just going to show you, these are your texts between you and Jose. You're the orange and he's the white. That's how much you guys texted on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Is it surprising?
Well, with all due respect to you guys and all that, I'd really like to just stop talking and go home now.
Okay. I want another chance at another interview with him, so I didn't want to ruin it. So we ended the interview.
Investigators' next move is to haul in Jose for questioning. Since he's a minor, they get permission from his parents to speak to him.
He was 15 at the time. He drank a lot. He had problems at home. He didn't have a good reputation.
Police talk to Jose, and he opens up.
Ashley dropped me and Nick off so we could go rob the house. She left. Nick told me he would go in. He wanted me to go in with him to go kill. And I told him no. I didn't want to. I was scared. He started walking towards the house. When he started walking towards the house, I ran to the river. I got to my house. And then Ashley and Nick show up. Nick is white as a ghost. I knew he had did it. He told me he had did it. He told me he did it.
Jose's story matches Ashley's, and suddenly police have two witnesses against Nicholas.
On February 12th, 2015, I got the approval from the district attorney to get an arrest warrant for Nick Ortiz. District court judge signed it and said, go pick him up.
Just like before, Nicholas remains uncooperative.
So I brought him in a copy of the criminal complaint. There were 5 total charges on the criminal complaint that I gave him. He said, I don't agree with 2 of these charges on here. And there were only 2 charges that were different from murder. So it's an admission to me. I knew I had him at that point. It was him.
With Nicholas taken into custody, detectives finally have some news for the Ortiz family.
I absolutely was shocked when the police said he had done this. I didn't think I have ever known anybody in my life who could do something like that brutal. I've never met anybody that could hurt people so grossly. It didn't make sense because that was not at all his personality when he lived with us.
People were in disbelief. As a pastor, it was hard for me to even fathom the fact that a young man like this could do something so tragic, this gruesome.
On June 15th, 2015, Nicholas goes to trial for massacring the Ortiz family.
Nick was a minor at the time. Given the fact that this was a heinous triple homicide, the judge did agree with my office that Nicholas should be charged as an adult.
When the trial starts, the prosecution is confident of a conviction until an unexpected development jeopardizes the whole case.
So in the middle of trial, we received a big surprise in Jose changing his testimony completely.
Nicholas Ortiz alone stands accused of a savage triple murder. His 2 former friends are taking plea bargains to testify against him. But just as prosecutors think it's a cut-and-dry case, the unexpected happens.
So in the middle of trial, we received a big surprise in Jose changing his testimony completely, pointing at Ashley as the individual who instructed them to kill the family.
Originally, the plan was to rob the Ortiz family, but according to Jose, Ashley had something more sinister in mind.
Jose Roybal testified that Ashley said, "Why don't you just kill them?"
It's a stunning statement, which the defense denies.
The case agent said, well, she said she didn't say that. And then the lawyer said, yeah, but Jose Roybal says she did, so somebody must be lying. Jose testified that Ashley gave the two boys socks to cover up their hands and plastic bags with Kleenex in them to cover up their feet so that they wouldn't leave traces there. He also said that she is the one that handed Nick the weapon.
According to Jose, in the early hours of June 19th, 2011, Ashley tells Nicholas and Jose it's time to put her unthinkable plan into action.
Ashley takes Jose and Nick to the Ortiz house, drops them off.
Jose got scared. He left. He ran home. Nick went towards the house.
He knocks on the back door. Lloyd Ortiz gets up out of bed. When he opens it, he's attacked by Nicholas with the pickaxe.
He didn't stop there. He went into the house and struck Dixie twice in her temple on the right side of her head with the pickaxe.
Nicholas moved on to the kitchen looking for the money, but he found Stephen instead.
Recognizing who is in his house, Stephen puts up a fight.
Nick delivers 17 blows to his head and body and kills him.
After Nick killed the three Ortizes, he didn't take anything. He got scared, so he just left. He walked out the door and called Ashley.
The revelations come as a shock to the victim's family.
Every day that we were at that trial, it was devastating because we learned things. I learned things that I didn't know. And I wish I hadn't, because it still haunts me.
Nick doesn't say a thing during the entire trial. It's Jose's word against Ashley's. How would their competing testimonies affect the jury?
The case was based almost entirely on Ashley and Jose's testimony, and that was a point of contention amongst people up until the sentencing.
After 3.5 days, I remember the jury went into the courtroom and the foreperson said, no matter how much time you give us, we're just not going to come to a consensus. So the judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial.
It was horrible. It was devastating to me.
I felt like our hearts had been ripped out. We had all this hope.
Luckily, we have the opportunity to try him again, which we did.
17 months later, in December 2016, the case goes back to court.
Luckily, this time around, we proved to all 12 jurors that Nicholas Ortiz was the individual that killed those three people.
On October 28, 2019, Nicholas is sentenced to 25 years in prison. The victory rings hollow for the victim's loved ones.
What that felt like to me was each victim, my mom, my dad, and my brother, was only worth 8 years each. That's exactly what that is. It's a joke. That's not justice.
He's gonna do probably 12 to 15 years. No way. No way.
Ashley Roybal received a 20-year sentence. 6 years of that was suspended, so 14 years of incarceration.
Jose got full immunity for his testimony. He never got so much as probation.
even though years have passed since the murders, their effects remain.
I would say I'm sorry to my parents and my brother. I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you. So I would say I love you and I miss you and I'm so sorry.
I want them to be remembered through their compassion, their love for children, their love for life, how they lived for us as their daughters, for my brother, and to remind us each day that that's how we should live.
For more information on an unexpected killer, go to oxygen.com.
Temporary switchboard.
Hello, I want to report a missing person. She's my children's mum, and when me and the kids woke up in the morning, she wasn't there, but her car's still outside.
Has she has an accident somewhere or some kind of medical episode, come to some harm where she can't raise the alarm herself?
Half the time they've been found safe and well.
I thought she might have just gone for a nice little weekend away somewhere.
The days went by and we started to realise that something had probably gone wrong.
You just instinctively know that something's wrong, something's not right.
You are under arrest on suspicion of murder of Sarah Welgreen.
In the middle of the Kent countryside lies the quiet residential area of New Ash Green.
New Ash Green was built in the 1960s and 70s as a kind of model village. It's a sort of nice bit of suburbia that's sort of been plonked in the middle of the Kent countryside. Nice place to live, for bring up families, there's sports clubs, pretty quiet. There is quite a strong community there. Everyone knows each other and supports each other.
It was the perfect community for popular beautician Sarah Welgreen to set up home with her growing family.
As a daughter, Sarah was everything you could wish for. She was caring, she was incredible fun to be with, brilliant company on it, you know, used to love going shopping, out for lunch, going on holiday together. She was feisty, she was very caring, and she'd always, you know, she'd always stand up for the underdog. Loved her children without question, always there for them. What else can you say?
I lived in the same house for the entire time I was in secondary school. I've always been close to my mum. If I ever needed anything or needed someone to speak to, she would have always been there for me.
As well as sons Jack and Lewis from a previous relationship, Sarah also had 3 children with Ben Lacombe and dedicated her time to her family.
Sarah worked incredibly hard for her children. She had her day job, but she also had clients in the evening and at weekends, so she had her official clients at work, she had unofficial ones, and everything she did for her children. If you went out shopping for the day, invariably the money would be spent on the children. She always made sure they had good holidays, Halloween, Easter, birthdays, never missed a thing.
My mum, she always used to provide for us. She'd rather go without and see us have everything that she could give us, really. She'd always put us before herself, and it really did make her a good mum. It was great. I was proud of how she was and the woman she was.
The couple's dedication to their children meant that when their relationship broke down, they decided to do what was right for the kids.
They were going to co-parent the children together and just have different rooms in the house and just bring their 3 children up together in a household where they'll have their mum and their dad.
Despite the unconventional setup, it worked for both Sarah and Ben. and both started dating once again, with Sarah meeting Neil on a dating app in 2016.
She'd met Neil, who lived in Farnham. They were quite happy.
I did like Neil, and yeah, from the times I met him, he was a nice bloke. Neil did love my mum.
The couple soon got engaged, and there was more exciting news to come.
In October, she phoned me up. She was really, really happy. She's just got this brand new job, pays more money, she'll be better off, the kids will be better off, she'll be able to help me out more with anything I need. So she was really excited to start it, so everything was looking up for her.
And she was absolutely thrilled to bits with it. She couldn't wait to get started. And that was, like she said, it's in the next phase of my life now.
On 9th of October 2018, just before 8 p.m, Sarah returns home from work still on a high about the new job offer.
She'd come home and she'd been seen arriving, went into the house. She went to bed, had texted a boyfriend, sent a few text messages to other people. She told a friend that there's always something to look forward to. You've just got to open your eyes and dream.
The following morning, Sarah's boyfriend Neil texts Sarah, yet he doesn't receive any reply. After a few hours, he calls Sarah's ex, Ben, to ask if he knows where she is. But Ben tells Neil he thought she was with him.
Neil hadn't heard anything and wasn't getting responses back from Sarah, which was unusual. So he had phoned Sarah's parents.
Neil rang me and said, I've been trying to get in touch with Sarah. She's not answering her phone. And well, Sarah could be a bit scatterbrained. Either her phone would be out of charge or it'd be unplugged or she'd leave it in the car. So I tried to ring her a few times and then I thought, well, when Neil said he couldn't get hold of her, to be honest, I thought maybe she doesn't want to talk to you because it could be a bit intense.
She might have just been ignoring him to begin with, which she could do. So when I tried getting hold of my mum and she wasn't picking up her phone, I tried through Facebook, texting, phoning some more, just any possible way out to get hold of her. Like tried her other phone, her work phone that she had, but nothing.
The following day, Ben reveals Sarah's still not returned home, and concern for her well-being starts to grow.
Messaged her again and tried WhatsApp, and then I thought, no, this is really, really odd.
I became quite worried because I just wanted to know if she was all right. It's my mum, like, it's the person who's brought me up for my entire life. I just wanted to know that she was okay.
After 48 hours and still no sign of Sarah, Ben decides it's time to call the police.
Kent Police Switchboard.
Hello, I want to report a missing person.
Okay.
She hasn't gone missing before. She lives with me. She's my children's mum. She came home Tuesday night and then we all went to bed. And then when me and the kids woke up in the morning, she wasn't there. But her car's still outside.
On Thursday, the 11th of October, Ben Lacombe contacted us to report Sarah had gone missing. He told us that he'd come home from work. He said Sarah had come home just before 8 o'clock and she had gone to her room and she had settled herself into her room, which was on the first floor in their house. They stayed in separate rooms in that house. He told us that after putting the children to bed in the evening, he went to bed himself in the loft converted bedroom. And he said he went to sleep, had a full night's sleep. He'd woken up in the morning and found that Sarah's car was still at the address that she was missing. After Sarah had been reported missing, officers attended the address and we began a missing person investigation.
Officers turned to Ben for help to piece together Sarah's last known movements, but he said he fully expected to see her the next morning, as it was a special occasion.
He wasn't expecting that Sarah would be gone. In fact, that day was one of their children's birthdays, and they had plans, and he'd expected her to be there.
Officers carry out a routine search of Sarah's bedroom and immediately notice something.
What we did find was that Sarah had left behind not only her car, but her car keys, her house keys, her purse, her cash, her bank cards, her handbag. In fact, everything that anybody could tell us that Sarah had was still at the address. Certainly, it looked like she'd gone out without any planning, leaving everything behind.
Concern was now growing.
There was no way she'd have gone out and left her keys behind.
The minute I'd realised that she'd left her handbag behind, with a purse, car keys, and so many other things that
Bank
Sarah,
cards.
of all the people, would never have gone without any of those things.
For somebody that's gone missing, to have left all of those items behind was really strange and really concerning.
You just instinctively know that something's wrong, something's not right. Something's happened to her.
In the quiet suburban area of New Ash Green, concern is building over mum of 5 Sarah Wellgreen, who has been missing for 2 days. With her life seemingly looking up, a new job and a fiancé, police need to ascertain what would make her disappear. So establish a timeline of Sarah's last known movements on the 9th of October, the day she went missing.
It was a normal day for Sarah. She had taken her children to school that morning. She'd then gone out to meet some of her clients. She was a beauty therapist that used to meet some of her clients at their home addresses, so she went out and saw some of those people. And generally had what her family were telling us was a normal day. Sarah drove home and went into her home address. She'd settled herself into her bedroom. We know that she'd phoned her friend, and then she was settled down for the night.
When she disappeared, the next morning there was contact between various people who knew her. It was agreed that if she didn't return that day or by the next day, that Ben Lacombe would telephone the police.
Kent Police Switchboard.
Hello, I want to report a missing person. She's my children's mum.
Concerned that her disappearance was out of character, police issue a missing person appeal to the public.
I first became involved when we received a press release from the police initially about a missing person from New Ash Green. They said Sarah Wellgreen had gone missing. There were concerns for her welfare. We get so many cases of missing people that you're probably not too worried to start with. Half the time before you've written a story, file copy about a missing person, the police will send something out saying they've been found safe and well.
But there was something more pressing for the police. Sarah had left her car keys and purse at home, leaving only a couple of scenarios to consider.
I thought maybe she'd gone out for a run and hurt herself.
Has she had an accident somewhere? Has she gone out and had some kind of accident or some kind of medical episode, come to some harm where she can't raise the alarm herself?
With the first few hours of a missing person investigation being critical, police launch a search perimeter around Sarah's home.
They set up a 5-mile radius around New Ash Green for the search effort, scouring woodlands, fields, sheds, wherever anyone could look.
I think they've done all the right searches they could within the area, you know, woodland, scrubland, the mud flaps. They've done all the right checks.
Desperate to reach out to his mum, Lewis turns to social media, and the village community immediately rally round.
Lewis put a call out on Facebook one evening saying his mum was missing and had anybody seen her. And I was thinking, oh, you know, something needs to be done. So I phoned the pavilion. They said, yeah, we can meet people there. We put a shout out on Facebook.
I think the whole village answered the call, really. Everyone turned out.
The response I got from the post on Facebook, it went quite far very, very quickly. It was shared hundreds of times. It got all over social media so quickly, and then it got put into the papers and everything like that as well. Just from one little post like that, there was hundreds of people that went. Most of the village in New Ash Green went, and from the surrounding areas went as well. It did give me hope that I would be able to see my mum again.
The search began with combining the efforts of the police and the community, police leading it, of course.
We have walked and searched every piece of woodland, every field, every bit of grazing land.
There was a sort of lingering hope that she'd be found, you know, maybe she was injured or something, or, you know, something had happened, but she was okay, and that they would come across her. But the longer it went on, it was just no news at all about anything like that.
With no sighting of an injured Sarah within a 5-mile radius, police check her digital footprint for any clues into her whereabouts.
The police looked at her telephone evidence, they looked at billing data, they looked at banking evidence, all various sources of evidence, looking at hospitals to see whether or not there was any trace of her.
There was nothing, no footprint at all digitally of Sarah from that point onwards.
With Sarah seemingly having disappeared without a trace, detectives tried to delve into her life.
We spoke to many people, her family, her friends, and other people in the community, people that Sarah had as clients. We were trying to build up that picture of Sarah. She was a happy person at the time. She had just secured a brand new job offer, which she'd accepted, which came with a fixed salary and a company car.
No doubt whatsoever that Sarah would disappear like that. She was so happy. We'd had a drink on the Friday, she was happy. She was full of life.
With all logical avenues as to Sarah's whereabouts exhausted, police start to suspect something more sinister has happened.
The days went by, and we started to realise that something had probably gone wrong.
My suspicions became raised that something had come to cause Sarah some harm, rather than Sarah having just taken herself away. I then was considering, well, who may have caused Sarah harm? Had Sarah gone out and met somebody that was pre-planned, and that person may have then caused Sarah harm? Had Sarah had somebody come to the address and he had taken her away?
But who would have done such a thing? Suddenly, everyone known to her is under scrutiny.
We actually had the police turn up at the house to see if she was there, and it's like, no, we, the ones who've got someone to phone you, she's obviously not here. But obviously they've got to do their job, they've got to come around and check all addresses that she might be at, things like that. So I understand, but turning up to the address where me and my brother are living.
Despite searching multiple addresses of family and friends, there is no sign of Sarah. And when they speak to Ben again, he admits that despite playing happy families, there's more to Sarah than meets the eye.
He went on to say that Sarah's life is a bit strange. It was a bit weird. He said Sarah often would go missing, would often disappear, would go away without telling us, that actually she would go off and meet other people.
Suddenly, police are met with an endless list of suspects. Did Sarah secretly meet someone she knew that evening? Police begin to look closely at anyone Sarah might be romantically involved with, including fiancé Neil, one of the last people Sarah spoke to.
The police came round with a search van on the Friday. They were there for a couple of hours because we sat down and they were asking questions, chatting about lots of different things, lots of possibilities, everything like that.
Neil tells police that he had a brief conversation with Sarah on the night she went missing.
That night I phoned her at 24 minutes past 9. We had a 15-minute conversation and then we exchanged a couple of texts after that, which was normal, and then we said goodnight.
Detectives check his phone records and confirm these calls, but he still needs to prove he was at home in Surrey when he made the calls.
I had my daughter, who at the time was 3, overnight anyway. And so they knew I wouldn't take a 3-year-old all the way over to Kent around the M25. As I said to them, look, if that's any concern, then just check the M25 cameras.
Neil's story is quickly verified, so attention turns to other friends and acquaintances.
We had a lot of people involved in Sarah's life, and we did a significant amount of work to show how they could not have been there that evening. They could not have been with Sarah that evening. And in all of the evidence that we found around Sarah, through her messaging, through her contacts, through her phone, we had nothing to say that Sarah had made any plans that night to go anywhere. There was nothing to say that she'd gone out.
1 week into the investigation, and Sarah remains missing.
You struggle to take it all in to begin with. There's just so many people trying to get hold of you, message you to make sure you're okay. It's hard to explain in a way of how it sort of makes you feel, because you're a mixture between angry, upset, worried, and you just want to know where she is. That's all it is. You just want to know that she's okay.
The desperate search for Sarah intensifies. Police trawl CCTV cameras from neighbouring homes in the village on the day Sarah disappeared.
We captured on CCTV some footage that we were able to see from a neighbour's address. Sarah drove home and she parked her car outside her home around 5 to 8 in the evening on that Tuesday. She then went into her home address.
Police keep watching the CCTV, and suddenly all becomes clear.
And it was from that moment that he became a suspect for potentially.
In the quiet residential village of New Ash Green, the community is desperately waiting for news into the disappearance of Sarah Wellgreen, who vanished from her home the night before her young child's birthday. Ben Lacombe says Sarah returned home from work and both retired to their separate bedrooms. When he woke in the morning, she had gone. But a neighbour's CCTV camera reveals something unusual at 2 a.m. on the night of her disappearance.
The CCTV imagery demonstrated captures of a vehicle which was in all ways similar to the vehicle driven by Ben Lacombe, and it had, because it was a taxi, a distinctive logo on the driver's side of the door. And one of the captures, although it was very grainy in the night, had a blur consistent with that same logo.
With some expert commissioned work around the imagery that we've got and comparing that to the vehicle itself, we had very strong evidence to say that that footage was that vehicle.
Believing the vehicle to be Ben's taxi, detectives trawl CCTV and ANPR cameras in the neighbourhood in an attempt to follow the vehicle's movements.
His taxi had been caught on CCTV cameras going out of New Ash Green and down country lanes, going south and finally at Plaxell Green Lane, at which point it had kind of disappeared.
And then a little while later on, there were captures of an almost identical vehicle travelling back the other way. And that was key, because there was no vehicle that went out and back in that way.
So we now had Ben Lacombe's vehicle on the move between around 2 a.m. in the morning to around 4:30 a.m. in the morning, the night that Sarah had gone missing. So why was Ben Lacombe's vehicle moving for 2.5 hours or so that night when he said he was alone, asleep in his own bedroom all night?
Despite neighbours' CCTV capturing his vehicle return at 4:30 a.m, was it really Ben who was driving it the night Sarah vanished? Detectives rewind the footage to see if anyone else entered the property before Sarah arrived home.
Ben Lacombe told us that he'd come home from work. CCTV footage showed that he came home about 5:10 in the evening.
Detectives keep watching, but no one else is seen entering the property before Sarah arrives. But it was the neighbour's CCTV which flagged up another interesting detail.
Ben Lacombe had a sophisticated CCTV system installed at his own address.
From the neighbour's CCTV, we were able to see, going back and viewing 3 months' worth of footage, that the CCTV cameras on Ben Lacombe's house was on almost every single night running up to when Sarah went missing. And we know that because you can see the infrared lights of the cameras through the other footage to see when they're on and when they're switched off. So we know that after midnight, the cameras were switched off on Ben Lacombe's house.
With more and more discrepancies in Ben's account, police start to believe he knows more about Sarah's disappearance than he lets on, and start to piece together his movements.
We are able to show that when Ben Lacombe drove home from work the day that Sarah went missing, he'd passed some cameras and we could see that his car was spotlessly clean. The following morning after Sarah had gone missing, Ben Lacombe took the children to school, passing other CCTV cameras. Now that morning, the car is now dirty. There is mud up both sides of his car and around the tyres and the wheels of his car, but wasn't there when we saw him arrive home the day before. Around 10:30 that morning, he went to the office where his cab firm is that he worked for to see one of his colleagues. When we see it arrive outside that office, the car is spotlessly clean again.
It appears that on the night Sarah went missing, Ben Lacombe drove somewhere in his vehicle, resulting in it getting covered in mud. But there's a 2-hour window where the vehicle goes off radar. So where did he drive to? And where is Sarah? Having carried out some good old-fashioned detective work, and despite not having found a body, police make a decision.
So it was on the Monday, doing a formal review of what we had so far, that we moved the investigation from being a missing person investigation into the next day, when it became a homicide investigation.
They said they weren't going to do a television appeal, and I thought, they know something's happened. And on you just know that you're not going to see her again. You know that.
Police believe Ben Lacombe murdered Sarah, but with no cause of death or clear motive, need to work harder than ever to build a case for an arrest. Phone records prove Sarah sent her final text at 10 p.m. Their home CCTV was switched off at midnight, giving Ben a 2-hour window in which police believe he killed Sarah, before putting her in his car and driving off.
The defendant having driven to some kind of deposition site, a grave where he had disposed of Sarah's body.
And then returned along the same route, where he's picked up again on CCTV. There was mud on his car the next day, which he had cleaned off promptly before going to the taxi office.
It was a pre-planned murder that Ben carried out. He killed Sarah. And myself and my team at the Major Crime Department, we instigated plans on that day to have Ben Lacombe arrested on suspicion of the murder of Sarah Welgreen.
Please, can you open the door, please? Morning. Morning. Venice, please. Just sit up first, chest hands with it. Okay. Right, sit up first and let you wake up and I'll explain what's going to happen. The time is 6:45. You are further under arrest on suspicion of murder of Sarah Welgreen. This is a further arrest on the discovery of fresh evidence. This evidence provides inconsistencies with statements provided when you reported her missing. Your arrest is necessary to allow you to be questioned about the offence. stand. Stand up. Okay, you don't have to say anything, my harm defence, you mention in question, later on in court. Anything you do say may be evidence.
When I found out that, he'd actually been arrested for murder, there's a feeling of anger, hurt, hate, all of the things that you'd associate with your partner being killed.
It's just a massive shock to the system. It's just unbelievable what goes through your mind. Now all the questions is where is she? What did he do? How did he do it? Did she suffer? Was it quick? You just don't know the answers to it.
Okay. So you are under arrest today on suspicion of the murder of your ex-partner, and I understand you still live in the same address, that's Sarah Wellgreen. Now, as I say, you're here on suspicion of murdering her. We believe she may be dead, and that may be at your hand. So, did you kill her?
The pressure is on to find Sarah's body, establish a cause of death, and prove a motive to enable police to charge their suspect.
It was a vast operation, and one that has involved help from not only officers and staff from across Kent Police, but from across other forces nationally, using experts from the fire service, the marine unit searching water, searching confined spaces. We've searched around 1,400 different areas. We haven't found Sarah.
With searches proving fruitless and the clock ticking, detectives press Ben further.
So, I'm not clear at the moment, Ben, whether you're just trying to think of an answer or whether you've decided not to answer the question.
He remained utterly silent. He did not answer any of our questions. He did not give us any information. He stayed absolutely silent and stared at the floor through 7 hours worth of interviews.
After failing to answer any questions, and despite no body being found, police charge Ben with the murder of Sarah Wellgreen. But what really went on that night? And why did their once-loving relationship end in such a tragedy? In a Kent village, the body of mum of 5, Sarah Wellgreen, has still not been found. But police pursue a case of murder and have charged 38-year-old taxi driver Ben Lacombe.
It's hard to believe that it's happening to you. I know you see things like that, everything going on in the news, and see it all in the newspapers and things like that all the time. You never think it will hit home, never, until one day it just turns up on your doorstep.
In September 2019, the trial into a no-body murder case begins at Woolwich Crown Court.
When you prosecute a case in which the body of the deceased has not been found, it presents unique challenges in the trial. And those challenges is to demonstrate that the defendant that you're prosecuting is responsible for killing the deceased.
The prosecution reveals to the court a conversation between Ben and police a few days before he was arrested.
We asked Ben Lacombe if we could take information from his mobile phone, and he said to us that actually he wouldn't give us his phone. It was very late. He wanted to go to sleep, and he would give us his phone the next day. As it turned out, and what we later captured on CCTV, was that Ben Lacombe didn't go to bed. He left the address. He travelled around and went into the Dartford and the Greenhithe area and parked up for a few minutes late at night near the River Thames.
There was CCTV footage of the defendant in the pouring rain, desperately trying to get rid of something. And the prosecution suggested that that was the defendant trying to get rid of his own telephone. We knew from other evidence that he had purchased a new telephone in the days that followed Sarah's disappearance. And he was obviously keen to get rid of his own telephone, a telephone which could have given the police an indication of his whereabouts on the night of the 9th of October.
The prosecution reveals further evidence linking Ben to murder.
Although the police didn't know exactly what had happened to Sarah's body, they knew that there had been a period of an hour and a half or so where that vehicle had disappeared. And it seemed likely that as part of the planning, Ben Lacombe had already chosen where it was he was going to dispose of Sarah's body. It may even have been that he had already dug her grave.
When we did a search of Sarah Wellgreen and Ben Lacombe's home, we found a very large shovel in his shed.
The defendant's account of why he needed a shovel of that type at his trial would later become that the shovel was there for his mother to use to tend to the flower beds at the front of his property. Well, on any view, the flower beds at the property didn't require a shovel of that size, and the explanation given just simply wasn't a credible reason for having a shovel of that type. But it was a shovel that was relatively new in its appearance and was consistent with the type of implement that someone would use to dig a grave quickly.
Despite presenting their evidence to court, police still have no obvious motive as to why Ben would kill the mother of his 3 children. But as the trial unfolds, more information about the couple and their relationship comes to light.
Ben Lacombe was born in Greenwich, grew up in Charlton. Early 2000s, he moved to Mallorca, where he was hoping to find work as an airline pilot, or train as an airline pilot.
In December 2004, Ben met Sarah via an online dating site.
In the beginning, when Ben first met my mum, from what I could tell as a child, he was a nice bloke. From what me and Jack had seen, he was all right, he was nice. And everything seemed great, really, to begin with.
Desperate to create a stable home environment and provide her sons with a father figure and a better lifestyle, Sarah quit her job and moved to Mallorca to start over with Ben and her 2 sons.
Obviously, Sarah thought, oh, this is going to be a good life. You know, I really want to give this a try. And it did sound good.
But it became clear to the courtroom that their new life in the sun didn't work out as planned. Unable to speak the language, Sarah couldn't get a job and missed her family and friends back in the UK. Ben's dream to become an airline pilot failed to materialise, and instead he worked a low-paid airport job.
In the end, they moved back to England. By that point, they'd had their first child together, and they moved to New Ash Green.
The couple settled into village life. Sarah got a good job while Ben started working as a taxi driver. But cracks soon started to appear in their relationship.
They muddled along, arguing, bickering, fighting for months after that. And they finally split up. Sarah had made her mind up. She'd had enough.
But if Sarah thought splitting with Ben was going to be easy, she was mistaken. He threw her, Lewis and Jack out on the street, keeping their 3 youngest children inside the house with him.
I was angry with Ben, but that had been built up through a few months of just listening to the arguments and things like that, and then that just throwing us all out was just unfair on us, really. We had nowhere else to go.
The next morning, Ben already had a court hearing arranged, and he stated in court that Sarah abandoned her children. Could he have custody? And he was awarded custody. It was all pre-planned, and Sarah could not defend herself because she did not know what was happening.
Distraught that she no longer had access to her youngest 3 children, Sarah and her 2 eldest sons moved in with her mum and stepdad.
We were absolutely devastated. You see your child crying and you can't help them. And we literally scraped up everything we had to go and see a solicitor.
But things took a positive turn for Sarah in August 2016, when she was awarded full custody of the children. Not only that, she met boyfriend Neil. Despite this, Sarah was terrified that Ben would attempt to take the children away from her if she moved in with Neil. So she made an unlikely peace offering with Ben to raise their 3 children under the same roof.
Sarah wasn't happy about living with Ben. There was definitely animosity between the two of them. You know, they'd been together for a number of years. That didn't work out for various different reasons.
Yet Sarah had a plan: to buy Ben out of their 4-bedroom family home. And she soon secured a new job with a big enough pay rise to make this happen. And after arriving home from work on 9th October 2018, she tells Ben her plan.
Ultimately, Ben had lost control. The house was going to be put up for sale. He was going to lose his home, even though he was going to get half the equity.
And he'd lost not just, you know, the property which he loved so much, but he'd lost control of the children.
When you look at Ben Lacombe, he would have been left with almost nothing.
Because he would have found himself in a position that Sarah was in not long before. And I think that probably pressured him into doing something stupid.
Ben was the only one that would have a motive for killing Sarah. Nobody else. Ben had everything to gain from getting Sarah out of the picture permanently.
After a gruelling 30-day trial at Woolwich Crown Court, the jury returns its verdict. Ben is found guilty of Sarah Welgreen's murder. He is sentenced to 27 years in prison.
"27 years for Ben Lacombe is not enough. Ben Lacombe should never see the light of day until he admits to those 5 children where he's put their mother. I've got one child who came home crying the other day because they wanted their mummy to pick them up from school one last time. So no, not enough.
The case of Sarah Welgreen is among a small number of convicted murder cases in the UK in which the victim's body has never been found. But the community has never given up hope of finding her.
We give the family hope that one day they will be able to find her, otherwise they've not got that hope to hold on to.
And that they know that we're still looking, and they know that we won't stop looking, do they?
It's not been forgotten.
No, not at all.
We would like closure. All of us would like closure. For the body to be disclosed, to have a proper funeral, would probably help us all put it to bed.
2 years on from her disappearance, Sarah's family are slowly coming to terms with life without her.
Ben's actions have caused me to lose my mum, for some of my siblings to lose their mother and their father at the exact same time. And it's an unthinkable thing. It really is. You never expect anything like this to ever happen to you, and you wouldn't wish it on the worst person. It's just a horrible, sunken feeling and just a hole in your heart that you'll never fill.
It is very raw. There's not a day goes by when you don't think about her, whether it's something that's played on the radio, you see something, oh, Sarah would like that, or something the children say. Yeah, there is never a day goes by, and I don't think that will ever change for any of us.
And until she is found, the question remains, where is Sarah Welgreen?